Hello, everyone. I want to give you guys a warm welcome. Actually, not too warm. We're in Las Vegas right now. I'm here with Binh Dang, our guest speaker, at his home. Let's start the interview. Today, we're going to listen to his journey, how he started MeridianLink, some of the lessons he learned, and what else we can find about his personal life. All right, Binh, thank you for joining us today. Let's start with your journey. I mean, you are an immigrant from Vietnam.
Right.
And you left at a young age, 7. I mean, tell us about that journey that brought you to the U.S. Was it to here, or where was your first destination?
Sure. So I left Vietnam in 81, and I ended up in Maine because we had a sponsor in Maine. It was a Vietnamese man married to his American wife. We landed in Maine in October. So you can imagine, if you're familiar with Maine, it's really cold and it's a lot of snow.
Yes.
I was the only Asian kid, I think, potentially in the town, much less the elementary school that I went to. But we stayed there for 3 months, and then my dad made contact with some relatives in Southern California. And so we hopped on a Greyhound bus and we headed down to there. And pretty much from 82 all the way until 2018, I lived in OC.
That's a long bus ride. So that's basically the entire
US,
country.
continent of the US, yes.
Continent of the US.
Yes, I slept most of the time, but yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I've never ridden on a Greyhound. Do they do multiple stops?
I don't remember. It was so long ago, and I slept so much. I don't remember.
Jesus. So then you started your life again in Santa Ana or in Orange County, or where?
In Orange County. I mean, we moved every single year, so there isn't one city that stuck to me, except for when I was in high school. We actually stayed in one city for 4 years, but other than that, we moved every single year. So, but it's all Orange County.
Okay. And then early on, did you know what you want to do? I mean, you ended up being a computer software developer.
No, if you had asked me what I wanted to be, I would have answered an astronaut. If you had asked me what an engineer was, I would have told you it was someone who worked on a railroad, because you watch cartoons and the engineer was the guy that ran the train. I had no conception of what engineer was. My interest in computers mainly came from my interest in computer games. So I think when I was 13, my dad bought a IBM XD computer. So computer, no hard disk, 2-color monitor, and I used to play video games. Now, it was not a great computer, so I had to learn to add parts to it. I had to learn how to configure, do all of those things.
Yeah.
And one of the games that I was playing, there were certain parts of the game that was fun, and there were certain parts that was boring. And so my first computer program that I wrote when I was 14 was to automate the boring part. So what happened is it would do the boring part. I go watch cartoon. When it needed me to do something, it'll beep, beep, and I'll run over and I'll fix it. Then I'll go back and watch the cartoon. And then once it finished that part, then I go play the fun part. And I would make tweaks to the program, but basically it was a script to automate it. And that was
how did you get into the software? I mean, how did you get into the game software to do that? Was it a separate freestanding?
So the way the game worked was an online game. It was a text-based game, and you use a modem software to interact with that game that you connected over the modem. And the modem software had scripts that you can use to automate certain things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you figured that out on your own.
I figured it out on my own. So in today's world, you would use a browser to connect to some website, and the script would be client-side JavaScript that you would write to automate some of the behavior or some of the action that you want to have done on the website.
You were 14.
I was 14.
I have a 14-year-old son. You should be listening to this. But that seems like unusual for a 14-year-old. So there was a lot of. Did you have friends at school that did a lot of computer? Or was it just something? At school, did they have computer classes?
So this was 89.
Yeah.
They did have one computer class where you learn Pascal, but computers it's not as dominant as today, where a person can have 2 or 3 computers.
Right.
Back then, maybe 1 in 5, 1 in 10 households that had computers. So most of my friends were more interested in sports and other activities. They didn't have computers, and they certainly were not playing computer games.
Mm-hmm.
And they certainly were not playing online computer games before the internet.
Yeah.
So I would say I was.
So these online games, were they mainstream, or was it something that gamers were looking at and they found it was like more specialty type of games?
They were.
Because I didn't hear about this game when I was growing up. So I don't.
They were not mainstream. So
Yeah.
so what happens is you have a guy who is geeky and he wants to set up what they call a bulletin board system. It's kind of like a website back in the day. And he'll pay the phone company to install 1, 2, or 4 phone lines. And he'll attach 2 to 4 modems to that. And people can dial in. And then he has a software that's like a server that they dial in. They can do certain things. So they can do certain things like leave messages to each other. They had a relay network where they would send message packet between, let's say, this server and another server. They connect at nighttime. They'll send a message so you can communicate with people around the country. They'll have the ability for you to share pictures, upload images, and you can imagine the dominant use of the internet is for certain kind of content, and so back then that was also true even before the internet.
Okay.
I didn't have access because I was underage, but that existed. And they also had games so that people would come and play games. And some of the games were multiplayer, not the way the games right now where you're interacting live, but more of you take turns playing the same game. So you can play chess, you can play Risk, taking turn playing those games online.
Right. Wow. So there was no computer clubs or anything in school.
No,
Back
not
then it
yet.
was pretty early.
Yeah.
So then you graduated and moved on to college and you picked computer engineering as a major.
I selected biology.
Biology.
My reason was this. My reason was I was sitting in physics class, looking at my application, and I didn't know what to select. My concept of engineer was some guy who works on a train.
Right.
So I didn't want to be that guy. And so I turned to the guy or the person on my left, and I said, "What do you select?" Okay, biology. What do you select? Oh, biology. Now it happens that they're both Vietnamese, and so most Vietnamese. If you see an Asian person on campus, you ask them what's your major, bio is probably 50% correct. Okay. And so that's what I selected. But when I received the syllabus, I'm looking at the classes and I wasn't interested in chemistry. I was interested in computer science classes. So I selected all of that. And so within, I guess, 1 or 2 quarters, I changed major.
So then did you do projects when you were in school, like different computer projects, or did you just?
So most people who go to school, I've observed, they stick with the program. So they have their syllabus, they enroll in the classes, the instructor give them or they have the class schedule, they enroll in the classes, the instructor gives them the syllabus, they follow the syllabus. And they do that, that's what they do. And then outside of class, they live the college life. For me, outside of class, it was either video games or I was trying to create some software projects. And so even back when I was a sophomore, when I started, so I was working since high school, but either freshman or sophomore, I started working in jobs where I had to use my computer skills. And so I would say, okay, what software program can I create for this application? And so, for example, one of my jobs was working as a computer operator for a stockbroker. What he wanted me to do was to use some software that he did to generate letters, mail them, for him to prospect for leads, for him to, doctors and lawyers, for him to provide stock advice to, and then they would go to him for the transactions.
So automated emails.
Automated emails. It's basically, they call it guerrilla marketing, but it's a drip marketing where you send mails constantly. And even then I was sitting there, I was thinking, can I make a software that's better than this thing? Right? How can I do that's better? Yeah. So I must have started maybe 3 or 4 projects during that time, sometimes by myself, sometimes with my friends. But I wanted to do it mainly to learn and to apply my skills.
Yeah. So throughout your college career, you were doing computer projects.
I did computer projects. We had a computer club at school. Didn't do anything other than competing in programming contests. And so I engaged in that. And it was kind of depressing. I mean, we had maybe a couple hundred students at our school, but we had a hard time getting 6 students to participate in the competition. And so that's an example of where I saw that my interest was a little bit more stronger than, let's say, most of my peers.
Yeah. So then this is in college, this is where you met your co-founder?
We met. I was a lab assistant providing advice, and my co-founder was 1 year younger than I. He knew another one. He knew my friend, and we all talked, and then we realized that we all liked Street Fighter, and so we would go to the arcade and play Street Fighter together. Yeah.
So did you guys talk about after school forming a company, or did that just happen later, more organically?
He was 1 year younger than my friends. So my friend and I, my other friends and I, we would create tax software, payroll software, software for video store. Back then, people were renting VHS videos, and so we thought about creating software for that. Tim, my co-founder, we didn't really interact on that level until maybe my senior year. Mm-hmm. And then in my senior year, I got a job at a mortgage technology company. Mm-hmm. My manager asked me to help recruit, and so I introduced him to my co-founder and one of my other friends. They hired him and not my other friend. And so that's how we end up working together.
I see. So you had graduated by then? Or?
No, I was in my senior year.
Senior year.
And I started working full time.
Yeah, so so you start working full time when you graduated, then you worked, then you quit the job, or you guys started a company upon graduation?
The company relocated to where the owner lived, which is in San Luis Obispo. So that's the middle of California. It's about 3-4 hours north of where I was living. Mm-hmm. So I relocated there. Tim eventually relocated there after he graduated. And we stayed there for about a year, and then I quit. Because every single Friday I would drive to Orange County. Yeah. And every Sunday night I would drive up there again. And when my manager left, I just realized that my reason for staying no longer existed. So I left. And then I went to work for another company. At that company, I also had an idea. I presented the idea to the owner of the company. He rejected it. And so I decided to do it on my own with Tim and one other guy. And 3 months into working on that project, the owner came and said, "Hey, Ben, I want to build that now." And at that point, I was like, I can't because of this thing. I told him the truth. But I also realized that because of that conflict, I could no longer stay. And so that's when I quit and became a full-time consultant.
Yeah. So did he give you reasons why he didn't want to do this product? Was this the product that is a precursor to MeridianLink?
Yes. So this was called MetalLink.
Metal.
The company I was working with was making software for manufacturing, sheet metal manufacturing. And I wanted to create a online e-commerce website for the fabricators. So there are a bunch of these small fabricators that would fabricate sheet metals for auto companies, for appliances. And I thought that they would see value in some sort of e-commerce website. And so that's what I wanted to do. As for why he didn't want to do it, I don't know. Maybe it was something he needed to marinate and think about for 3 months. Because eventually he did turn around and say, I wanted to do it.
But that's what you were working on. I got an e-commerce for fabrication.
On the side.
On the side.
Yeah.
What happened to that? Did you try to sell it and didn't work out?
We did. We went to one trade show in Chicago. I think that I didn't have any clients, and so I didn't have. So I didn't have anybody to provide me with feedback as to what the problem is. Also, my approach to things is a little bit different, right? A lot of time, you're advised to ask people what do they want. My view is, if they know what they want, you're not innovating. You have to find what the problem is, and you come up with what you think will solve their problem. And even then, they may not even know what the problem is. So you really got to ask them, what are they doing? And then you kind of identify what you think the problem is. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I didn't have anybody to do that. I didn't have anybody to give me the motivation to go a step further. And so I got distracted and I started doing something else instead.
Yeah. So what was the transition before Meridian? Was it this or was it something else?
So we were doing software consulting. I had a client that was a mortgage lender that wanted to do a online mortgage application. Tim had his own clients. We just pool our resources. My client capped my hours at 100 hours a month, and so I had some free time. And I used that free time to create a product that would have appealed to me working for him. And I thought that maybe there's other developers doing similar functions. Yeah. And so I thought about doing it for that product. I had to do a pivot. And when I did the pivot, I decided to modify the system so that instead of just providing credit report to developers, it would provide credit reports directly to the lender. And then I opened up the phone book. I found 5 credit reporting companies that may be interested in the software product. I contacted them. 2 of them agreed to meet me. And one of them said, yes, I'll buy the product. And that gave me a person that I can talk with to learn about the problem. It also gave me the motivation to continue further.
So these guys are loan originators.
They were people who sold credit reports to loan originators.
Oh, you picked 5.
From the phone, they only had 5 in the phone book, and 2 agreed to meet with me.
That's a pretty good return.
I just cold called them, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So this is the steps leading up to Meridian being, or is maybe this is you created the product and then you went and found clients for it.
Yes.
And then you pulled Tim in, or was Tim already with you?
Tim was already with me, so I was doing it all under the Meridian umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
The software was hosted on MeridianLink servers that Tim, through his projects, provided. So he had a client that he provided an e-commerce website for. That client was selling computers online, and that client, instead of paying him cash, the client paid him in computer servers. And so he set that up. Tim's more of a IT guy. I'm more of a software guy.
Okay. So then you didn't take any funds. You guys are just bootstrapping this.
We basically lived off the income from our consulting revenue.
Right.
That was it.
So you never thought about, oh, hey, I'm going to set up a company. I got to go find funders. I have to find angels. That's how the mentality is now, right? People right from day one, they're looking at, how to get funded. But that was not your approach.
That was not my approach, mainly because I was not aware of it.
Right.
So from school, I went to work for a startup. Now, he knew how to get funding, but we never had that discussion. Their internet was brand new. So I never worked in Silicon Valley. I never worked in the Bay Area, so I'm not exposed to that kind of thinking. And so for me, it was you earn what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
And also I didn't really have a grand vision for the product. I'm like, I'll make this product for me. Okay, I'll make this product for that guy. Yeah. I know who he is. He'll tell me what his problems are. Yeah. I'll make it for him. So it wasn't like I had like a grand goal. This is what I want to build. This is how big my team needs to be. This is how much capital I need. Right. That was not the issue. That was not the approach at all.
Yeah, it was just more day to day. It's like
more day to day. You learn as you go along.
So it's like okay, I work for this guy's company and he needs this product, and then I'm gonna work. I asked him to take on this project. He doesn't want it. I do it on my own.
Yep.
And you just start reiterating different projects, different products based on problems that you've encountered.
Yes, based on problem I encountered.
Yeah. So basically, your clients gave you the idea indirectly by you being working with them and seeing the problems they had.
My clients exposed me to their business.
Right.
I paid attention to what they were doing and why they were doing it to identify, and then I applied my understanding of technology to come up with a better solution than what they had today. They had at that moment.
Yeah. So then your first product, what was the name of it?
Mortgage Credit Link.
Mortgage
Credit Link, or MCL for short.
And it didn't do anything new, did it? I mean, it just did something that was already in the marketplace better.
It didn't do anything new. So the way a loan originator would buy a credit report would be they'll either call a credit company by phone and they provide their name and the address and social security number by phone, or they fax in the order. And then the credit reporting company would use their software to pull the data, and then they'll send the data over in a print in a not a PDF, but in a visual format over to, let's say, the guy's fax machine or a printer that he would then print out on some form.
Yeah.
And what that meant is that if you were a credit reporting company, you would have to have, depending on how many clients you have, you'd have to have 5, 10, 20 modem lines. Mm-hmm. And each modem line is basically one phone line with the phone company. And the phone company would charge you, let's say, $50 or $100 per line. We came on and we displaced the modem connection with an internet connection. So a single line rather than 10 or 20 lines, and a much better interactive experience. So rather than calling or faxing, they just go to a web page and they type in the order, hit submit, and then we automatically do everything else. And we also added more functionality, but we didn't invent a new business. We just brought new technology to an existing market. We also got lucky in that early on, one of our competitors went down for a week. And so that caused their customers to go looking around. And so we were able to, that 1 week process, sign up some large clients that allowed us to grow the transaction so that we were profitable within a year.
That reminds me of when MySpace had problems with server problems, and that opened the opportunity for the competitors.
Yes.
I think Friends and then Facebook.
Right.
And that was one of the biggest issues, that their server crashed.
Right.
And that just opened an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, like, if you're pulling credit report and merging them and making it nice and interface, what was stopping the guys that are doing the modems just to convert to a online interface? Because it's not incredibly like something that's that a coder couldn't do.
Lack of technological competence. So this was 2000. The internet was brand new, and there were not a lot of developers that knew how to create web application. I was fortunate to work for a company that required that, so I learned that early. If you look back during that time, it was so difficult to find web developers that some companies were offering cars as a sign-on bonus. Like what this one company offered is the BMW Z4 if they sign on.
Okay.
So it was really hard for them to find people who were capable of creating these products.
So you're also lucky in the sense that you left early to be on your own, because you could have been developing this for somebody else and you wouldn't have owned the product yourself.
Correct.
Yeah. So what prompted you to like say, look, I want to go on my own? Was it because of that you gave that project to the guy and the guy didn't want it, so you worked on the side and you realized there was potential, or was it like, well, I want to be my own boss?
That's part of it, but part of it also is I didn't know what I want, but I kind of knew what kind of work environment I didn't like. So typically with a lot of software companies, I don't know about now, but back then, the way it worked is your client, your boss, your manager come to you and say, I need this feature. And then you do some sort of rough estimate. You say, it'll take, let's say, a month, 2 months. And then because a lot of time the technical work is vague in terms of what needs to be done to make that work, they would negotiate with you to push down the timeline. And so as a consequence, 2 months become 1 month. And what happens is you work on it 3 weeks in, you realize you're behind schedule, and then you have to work overtime like crazy to try to hit that 1 month deadline.
Right.
You usually don't hit it anyway.
Right.
And so you end up producing a feature that was not very good. It was buggy. It doesn't meet a certain standard, and nobody's happy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The manager's not happy. You're not happy. Alternatively, there were some companies out there. The most notable one is Blizzard, that make video games, where they had no problem pushing the deadline by 1 year, 2 years, so that they can meet their quality standard. And that appealed to me, like making a quality product appealed to me. And so I didn't like doing software consulting because clients often would push for that. And so the company I was working for was also a consulting company. And so I left. I did do software consulting, but I really wanted to get out of software consulting.
But you started software consulting is more for
money was easy.
Money
was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's true, huh? And back in the 2000s, it was very early, and there was an internet bubble. Everybody was around that time. I think it started bursting at that time.
I think 2002 or 3 is when it burst. Yeah,
it started right around there, because some of the companies got listed, and then it just had a crash 2 years later. That's right.
Right.
So then MeridianLink, and it's part of a group of software called let's say loan origination software, right?
Yes.
So who were your field of competition at the time?
So credit reporting companies is a really small market, and it was consolidating. There used to be maybe 1,000 company, mm-hmm. and then it became 500 and 300, and then maybe now it's just less than 100. Part of the reason for the consolidation was there were changes in what the clients were asking for. The bureaus are pushing up prices, and there was a margin squeeze. Mm-hmm. And so they had to do more volume in order to survive. And the way you do more volume is by merging with your competitors.
Right.
So there were only maybe 2 other software companies in that space, and they either didn't have a web-based solution or they had one, but it wasn't as good as ours. I really cared about the customer experience, and that motivated us to create a much better product from a customer experience standpoint than what the other guy did.
Yeah, because I think in your profile you mentioned that within a year your first product was profitable.
Yes.
And so it funded your payroll. So you guys actually started putting reserves and growing and thinking about developing more products, right?
Right. So yes. So in 2000, Tim also created another product that was a joint venture with somebody else. That product eventually got sold off because the partner wanted to sell, and so we sold that off. And then he got experience from working on that project and from his consulting project to build what was called LoanSpeak. As for myself, I was working on the credit space, and with most software, eventually you have to integrate with other software product in order to provide your customer with the functionality that they're looking for.
Yeah.
So we were integrating with loan origination software to provide a credit report to that software so that the software can do its thing to help the client originate loans. And it was when and then this one company called LMA, which is came in, and they started charging the credit reporting company transaction fees to facilitate the integration. And when I learned that what they were charging the credit company was higher than what we were charging, I then realized that they had a higher position, a stronger position in the market space. And so I thought to myself, well, why don't I compete with them instead? And so that's when I launched my second product, the company's third product, called Lender's Office, to create a loan originating system for mortgage companies.
So how did that, so that in addition to the main functionality of pulling and merging credit reports, what additional functionality you had?
Taking in the full loan application, producing all the loan origination documents.
I see. So the whole gamut.
Yeah, the whole gamut, not just that one credit report, which is just one aspect of it.
But that itself was pretty profitable because the margins were pretty high.
Yes. So my mistake, but I made a mistake initially with that software. My mistake was to copy somebody else. So there's another player. They were a desktop version. So I thought, why don't I make a web-based version of that, and then I'll sell. It didn't sell. It didn't sell for two reasons. One, it was more expensive than what they were using because a lot of them were pirating the desktop software anyways. They weren't paying anything. Second, for loan origination, you needed a faster internet connection, and a lot of mortgage companies didn't have that fast connection. They had the slow connection to pull the credit report, but not fast to actually run their entire business online. And so I had to do a pivot. Pretty much all of our products, we had to do a pivot in order to find the right market niche. I pivoted to lending decision with that loan origination software, and I targeted the subprime market that was taking off during the 2004, 2007.
That's right.
And within a year and a half, that product became profitable.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. That's about 4 or 5 years before the whole real estate crash.
Yep.
So
then the crash was a fun experience too.
Well, I mean, but how did you identify that subprime market as a way to focus for introducing this product?
You go to trade shows, you talk to people, and whoever expressed interest, you talk with them more, and then you find out why they're interested, and then you build for that. So it's just about opportunity seeking. Again, I didn't go to MBA school. I didn't have an idea about creating business plans or market analysis. I just go by what was in front of me at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So from day one, you guys didn't take any outside money.
Correct.
Yeah. So then, how did this PE happen? The PE interest of the Thoma Bravo.
So throughout the life of the company, we've had PE call us, and usually my response to them is, I'll let you know when we need money, because I didn't know what to do with the money. It's not like, again, I had this great vision that I needed all this capital for. We were profitable. We were building a cash reserve, more money than we could spend.
Let's give the audience an idea, because I think this is very important for PE. Why would they be interested in you? How much revenue were you generating when these discussions started getting really serious with PE?
So the discussion didn't get serious until like in 2017 or 2018.
So you guys have been around for almost 16 years then.
Right. So the other PEs, we never got deep enough to where they actually saw the books.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably saw us floating on the market, and are interested in exploring. I'm not saying they're interested in buying. They're just interested in exploring. Their pitch to me was, don't exit, but exit a little bit. Take some money off, put it in a safe place, because you don't want to have all your capital in the business. That's not my mentality. My mentality is I'm all in, right? My business is everything. And the idea of work-life balance is meaningless. It's like work and life is one. You do what makes the most sense at the moment, right? 2018 was when we actually actively solicited PE firms to come in, and we had a lot of them, strategic and also PE firm. expressed interest and actually made offers.
So you had somebody that worked for you, like a broker, an M&A advisor, right?
Yes, we brought in Raymond James to help do the soliciting the bids, because they're really big. They know all the PE firms, so they have the relationship. They both help us put together the presentation package. They help us actually organize our books and records into a format that would be create our data room, into a format that would be easy for a buyer to quickly look at and determine whether they're interested, and then the additional content for them to do the due diligence. So we didn't have any of that. I mean, back then, despite the fact that we had over 300 employees, we were still running our accounting software on QuickBooks, which I don't know, it worked for us, but according to them, that was not good. So
So they prepped you guys for the show, basically.
For the show, yeah. It was a dog and pony show.
Yeah, I know. It's like I've gone through that a couple of times with clients and stuff. But the data room, they set it up for you, the documentation, the presentation, the pitch deck, the content, the design scheme, all that.
And they're motivated because they make their money. There's some fees, but most of the money they make is a percentage of the sale. And so they're motivated to get for you as high a transaction as possible.
So at the time, do you think, was it a good time for PE to come in? And just your impression in the marketplace, kind of the key driving factors for PE to be interested in loan origination software? Because that was after the mortgage, the whole real estate bust,
that was way after.
Exactly.
That was bust in 2008. So that's 10 years after. Yeah.
So was mortgage applications on the way up, and
mortgage went up? So mortgage at that time was not the majority; it was a minority percentage of revenue. Most of it came from auto lending, credit cards, other type of transactions, but banking in general. So I think at that time the interest was in fintech. Fintech was the popular idea,
right? And
we were. This is where it gets confusing, right? Because sometimes people say fintech are companies that provide financial products via technology. Other times they say it's technology companies that provide financial software to financial companies. I don't know which definition is right, but we were in that space,
right?
And so they were interested for that reason.
Yeah. So they approached you, and then was it a big selection? Was it a long drawn out process to figure out who? Was it like criteria that you guys had internally that who would you pick? Was it the highest bidder?
It was highest bidder. Because so if you're if you're seeking PE money for the purpose of growing and scaling, then there'll be other factors like compatibility, reasonable terms, longevity, other factors that you care about. If you're exiting for the purpose of exiting, the only thing that matters really is the bottom line, right? What they do with the company afterward, it shouldn't matter because it's not yours anymore.
Yeah. But they don't usually require you to stay on because they want to make sure there's a transition period where they don't lose their key, the key executives, right?
They do, and it's usually a 2-3 year period,
right?
But they know that your heart's not there anymore,
right?
So you're more staying to provide advice. You're not really staying to provide guidance. Control. So. For example, I was CEO for 17 years. Then my partner was CEO for 2 years. But after they bought in a new CEO, and my partner was shifted to a chief strategy officer, which for me is kind of like a fancy name for knowledge consultant. So he provided them with information, but they had a new CEO who went in and replaced or added a bunch of middle managers, and it was new management for the company.
Yeah, because typically PE, that's what they do. They need to have somebody in place in their mind that's going to run this company.
Yep.
And come in either early on or very soon,
right.
About a year or two after. Because, like you said, the original founders, they lose interest, and they just want and go and do this.
They lose interest, and they have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And usually, when you have a lot of money, you buy a lot of stuff, and the stuff that you buy becomes a lot of distractions. Which I learned, and I'm like, okay, no more buying stuff. I'm done.
So you guys you end up picking Thoma Bravo. How many competitors? How many genuine bids did you guys have?
At least over a dozen.
A dozen.
At least over a dozen.
Okay. So whoever just rolls to the top with the highest bid. Or is it timeline too, when they were able to close?
how aggressive they are.
Exactly.
So it's a combination of those two factors. And usually your attorney, my recommendation is get the best attorney. You want the experience, and the banker will have a good idea as to what makes the most sense, because the bankers will make the M&A guy will make money on the transaction, but they only make money if there's a transaction. So sometimes chasing the highest number that falls through for other reasons might not make the most sense.
Right.
So they have a good idea on the likelihood that the transaction will close too.
So it's in PE deals, unlike other deals, it's like a big part of it is debt.
Mhm.
So was that part of the consideration? How much of these guys are, in terms of like the likelihood of them being able to put together the purchase price money?
Yes. So Thoma Bravo, it's a huge company.
Right.
That was not a concern for us.
Yeah. So then they had a credit facility. At the time, there was a little bit of complication, right? Because they were trying to purchase another company,
right,
at the same time, simultaneously, then merge the two together.
Right.
Yeah. So were you involved in that at all?
Not in terms of decision-making process. The only issue that it created was more of an antitrust issue. So according to the law, if there's a deal where two competitors are being merged over a certain size, the number's kind of low, it's like $50 million. You have to get antitrust non-approval from the FTC. So you're not getting an approval. What you're doing is you're submitting your information to them, and then if they're quiet, they don't complain, they may ask you for more information, but if they don't complain about it for 30 days, then you have your non-approval.
Yeah. So PE, it wasn't in your playbook? Did you guys ever think about getting listed or exiting, or
Nope.
You guys were doing well, you had a big cash reserve?
Yep. And then we had a conflict, and then we had to go down that path to exit the conflict.
But if that conflict didn't arise, and your plan was just to grow the company more with more products.
Yep.
Just expand.
Yep. I had a great vision for my loan origination. So you mentioned the mortgage crash, right? So I went after the lenders, the subprime lenders, 2008. No more subprime lenders, no more subprime product. Subprime and out was a $1 trillion lending market, went down to zero.
Yeah.
So that product lost 75% of the customer base. Another way of looking at this is, instead of receiving checks for my invoices, I start receiving bankruptcy notices. So that was an experience. Now, I was fortunate that the credit reporting software was still profitable. So it didn't affect the company, but that product became negative. And so I had to do another pivot. And then I had a vision as to how to scale that into a $1 billion company.
So what was your pivot? Because you were doing auto loans already. You were doing credit cards. You were doing homes. So what else would you pivot to?
So we were doing mortgage decisions. As part of that process, we started building out more lending functionality. And so my pivot was to be a full blown out mortgage LOS software for mortgage lenders. And we had a dominant competitor in that space in the form of Ellie Mae. They were you could consider them the IBM.
So I still don't understand this. What would their product? Is it you helping them figure out which loans to buy and sell, or?
So the decision process is the decision engine was basically this. So they would have loan officers who would get borrowers coming in and say, here's my credit score, or here's my information. And then loan officer would acquire their credit report, find out about the credit score. And then the loan officer needed to know which loan product to fit you in, right? So 30-year fixed, 30-year ARM, 15-year fixed, what rate you qualify for, and how much do they charge you. And so one way to do it is to ask the lender, and then the lender have their lending guidelines. They would manually review and provide you with the information and do the whole process manually. The other way is we take those guidelines, we implement that into technology, and then the law officer just type information into a website, and they get back the answer immediately.
I see. So then you create parameters in which the decision making is much faster.
Much faster. So a 30-second decision rather than a 24-hour decision.
Okay. Now, is this something that that's because you coded in with specific parameters? Is this ripe for AI to do more of a fluid analysis?
I think so, because, well,
or is it just more machine learning?
So the parameters are created by actuaries working for the investors in the bonds.
Yeah.
And the parameters were in a format that a human person can consume it. To get into the software, we had to have specialized coders to take that content and put it into a format the computer can recognize. We could today use AI to consume that content and do that automatically.
Right.
And that will allow us to eliminate that team. I don't know enough about the actuary process to know whether they could use AI to replace the actuary process, but possibly because it's also statistics. I mean, AI is also statistics. So,
Right,
so yes,
exactly.
that's something that's possible too.
Yeah, because AI is primarily data and putting together an algorithm to produce a certain result based on that data, right?
Yep.
So I would assume that there's a lot of data inputs.
Right.
AI would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. That is an interesting point I haven't thought about.
Okay. So this conflict that you mentioned that kind of prompted you guys to decide to look for a buyer. How did that come about? Or is it something that you can share with the audience? Or?
Yeah. So the business structure, we had my partner and myself. We had most of the shares, but the shares were only us had the voting rights, and so it's 50-50 votings. There were 3 other minority shareholders that had non-voting shares. 2 of them was his brother. 1 of them was not. My conflict was not with my partner. It was with one of his brother. And I made a decision that I no longer wanted to help him make more money. Whatever money I help him make, no problem. I'll buy him out. Not a big deal. But I want him out of the company.
Mm-hmm.
My partner's Vietnamese. Vietnamese culture is to protect the family. So we were sitting. I was asking my attorneys or the company attorneys, what is my power as CEO? Who can I fire, right? Within a few minutes of that, my partner said, I want to be CEO. So unfortunately for me, I gave them control of the board way early on. And so they removed me instead. And
control of the board because they had two members on the board of directors.
Yeah.
Even though you had equal shares,
yes,
it was a number of people that was on the board.
Right. So
he had him and his brother.
Yes.
And so they voted because 2 votes outvoted you, even though their shares were less than.
Right. Yep. That's how corporate governance works. Yeah. I didn't know that at the time. I mean, I was just building software, making money, right? So they didn't really care about that kind of stuff. Like, okay, that's fine, right? You select your brother, no big deal. We go our separate ways. So how about I buy you out? Oh, you don't want to sell. Okay. How about you buy me out? Oh, you don't want to go into debt to buy me out. How about I sell to a third party? Oh, you don't want a partner. Okay. How about we split the company? Because our products were roughly comparable at that time. A little money would exchange hands to kind of even it out. But split the company. You have your product, you have your brother, I go my own separate ways. He didn't want to split the company. Okay, so I'm out of options, right? And the only option left was for him to buy me out for a price that would not require him to go into debt.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires that I'm so desperate to sell to him so that he can actually get that deal. So what they did was they basically blocked me from access to the book, so I couldn't go down the sale process. They would have dividends for taxes. So we were an S corp, and so the way in the U.S. work is that S corporation, whatever profit the company makes, the company does not pay taxes. The shareholder pay taxes. So I was personally liable for taxes on the profit the company make. Now he had control of the company, so he always loaned himself money if he wanted to pay the taxes. I had no ability to do that
because he was a CFO.
Because at the time he was CEO. Now he controlled the company, so they can make decisions as the board as to what to do with the money. And so by withholding dividends, I was then facing bankruptcy from tax liabilities within 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So then I put the company to dissolution. What that opens the door is for them to.
Why didn't you convert back to a C corporation?
I did.
You did?
But I didn't also want to wait 4 years. That's what I was told, how long it takes, and that's assuming there's no appeal process to exit the company. And so I decided to put the company to dissolution. And in California, if you have 50% or more voting rights, you can pursue voluntary dissolution. So there's 2 paths. There's voluntary and involuntary. Involuntary, you have to prove oppression. Voluntary, you say, I want to dissolve, and then the board have to follow the process. Now, when you do that, they now have the right to buy you out, to force you to sell to them for an appraised value. So I thought with an appraisal process, I'll get a much fairer value than whatever he was offering me.
Right.
And so at that point, they brought in some folks to help them raise capital to kind of figure this out. And in that kind of exit, there was no constraint they can impose on me. There was no non-compete. There is no non-disclosure. There was no like, be quiet, non-disparaging. I had free reins, right? And so what they were told was they would get much better terms if they were to bring me back into the fold and all exit together than if, let's say, they were to buy me out in that forced sellout. And so they were brought to the light, I would say. They came to me, say, we want to settle. I gave them my terms. We agreed. And
you guys started looking for buyers.
And then we brought in Raymond James, and then the rest is history.
Yeah. Wow. So that's a lesson learned, right? So picking the, well, actually, this wasn't a co-founder issue. It was his brother. Yeah. So how do you resolve those kind of things? I mean, that's probably one of the biggest challenges of running any company, right? It's just personnel and internal issues of like management issues.
Have a good shareholder agreement. Our shareholder agreement was a 6-page long. It's really short. We made it when we were 24, so we didn't know any better. That's the problem with boutique lawyers. They don't have the experience. There's a concept called buy-sell agreement. There's also a concept called there's different versions of it. Basically, it's a way where you can force the other party to buy or sell. So you offer a price, and then they either buy or sell.
Yeah,
that's their choice. So it's kind of similar to the idea of, let's say there's a cake, you want to split it. The one person cut the cake, the other person picked a slice.
Yeah, those terms are put into the shareholders agreement, right? Especially in the closed corporations where there's a small number of shareholders. Mm-hmm. They're put in place for instances like this to kind of have a resolution when there seems to be kind of like an insurmountable conflict,
right?
And they have to kind of part ways.
So one thing that I was not told, I wish that was told to me, is so when you do business with someone, you trust the person, mm-hmm. and so you're not going to think about any kind of conflict yet. It's not going to happen with us, right? Yeah. It's never going to happen. What I didn't know is that when you're young, your ability to evaluate people on their core character is very limited. So, and also you learn, and as you learn, you may also change, and they may also change, right? So those are things that you cannot foresee, and therefore just have it in there as a safety net in case you do learn. If it never comes up as an issue, it doesn't harm you in any way. Mm-hmm. But if it does somehow come up as an issue, it's a way for you to resolve it without the drama.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if you had to kind of summarize kind of the 3 lessons you learned from this experience, what would they be? From this whole experience of finding, putting a product together, would you start another product company, a service company? Would you be hiring, more of expensive attorney with getting the legal issues done in place earlier? Or would you think about exiting through the public markets, getting listed? Is that through PE? I mean, what are some of the things you learned from this experience?
I have 2 other companies that I started. Usually when someone exits, they tend to either retire or they become investors. So angel investor, they might start a VC fund. We see that with a lot of VC founders. I thought about that and I realized I like building things. And so I built more things and I'm self-funding it. I'm not out there. I like bootstrapping. It gives you, technically I'm able to finance it myself, but it gives you more ownership. So if you are successful, you get much more heavily rewarded. But it also doesn't create a situation where you have to grow. Or you have to grow beyond your ability. That's a very important thing, right? Especially for a young business person. If you're young, there's a lot you don't know. You're figuring things out as you go along. You're learning new things. If you're suddenly required to meet some sort of crazy milestone because that's what you promised to the PE firm or the VC firm to raise that capital, you may end up taking risk that you wouldn't take otherwise. Just kind of like, well, I had to do this, so I'm just going to do it. And that can lead to a higher chance of failure Whereas if you kind of just grow incrementally and learning as you go down the process, then you don't have to take those risks. You have a much stronger foundation. And at some point in the future, when you do have a clear idea as to what you need the money for, at that point, then go out there and raise money.
Yeah, but then there's a flip side to it, because I found working with companies that former founders who've exited and they self-finance. One of the issues is that they have blind spots because they're not pressured.
Like to the shareholder agreement.
Yeah, when things like that, they're blind spot. No, to actually product fit and going to market strategy, because they've already done it a certain way and they've succeeded and they have a chunk of money. They're self-financing. They don't really have external pressure. They don't have a voice outside telling them, hey, maybe the market has changed. Maybe your product needs to pivot. Maybe all those things. How do you guard against that type of situation where you are self-funded? Because I think that, that external pressure with a VC or with a PE is that, yeah, it could be financial pressures and it could be ideas that maybe they don't understand, but at least there's a secondary voice that is outside. And sometimes they have more of a macro view of the marketplace because you're so zoomed in on what you're doing. How do you guard again? How do you take the best of both worlds? Keeping as much equity for yourself and then not get blindsided and making sure that your product is going in the best direction it should be going.
So I think what you're talking about is you're not seeking outside pressure, you're thinking outside knowledge. And
yes.
PE companies do have knowledge. So I've seen numerous situations, and they probably did it with MeridianLink too, except I'm not in it, so I can't confirm it. But where they come in is they identify value that you're leaving on the table because, let's say, your pricing is too low, right? Typically, when you start a company, one way by which you compete on is price. As you grow, as you get bigger, you have a stronger position, and that opens the door for you to reprice your product. That was not something that we were thinking of. Mm-hmm. So I've seen them come in, buy a company, reprice their product, make it more expensive to their clients, but make more money, then exit in 3 years for 4x multiple of whatever they pay for. So I've seen that happen. So you're right. There are knowledge on that level that they can bring to the table. I don't know, maybe there's knowledge on a macro level, but there's definitely business strategy that they bring to the table. You should understand your market if you're in it.
Yeah, but for instance, like for your one of your new projects is Quest for Justice. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about that. What's that? Quest for Justice? It's a software platform. Right?
It's a software platform designed to help litigants who are going to court without a lawyer learn about their legal rights, learn about their legal process, so that they can protect their rights in court without the lawyer. And here's a fact that few people know. I certainly didn't know. If in this country, if you are charged with a criminal charge, you're guaranteed a lawyer. If you have a civil dispute, there is no guarantee. You got to get one yourself. And lawyers are so expensive that 70% of litigants, civil litigants in court, don't actually have representation.
Right. So they go pro per.
They go pro per. So you have a system that is designed by lawyers for lawyers to use. And most of the users are not lawyers. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a computer software that's designed for programmers to use, but most of the users are non-programmers. It's such a bad system. And so we're creating an interface to that system that's more consumer friendly. Yeah.
So you're like the Apple for the litigation world.
And yeah.
Make it user friendly.
Yes.
Make it more accessible to the general public. But this is where I think that I don't know. I guess you should have a lawyer on your team, right?
I do. My partner is a lawyer.
But has he tried cases? Has he?
He has.
Okay, so then he has that experience to bring into the product development, right?
And we hire lawyers. We have 3 lawyers on our team that you can hire that have done cases to help us do research on the law that basically create requirements that our developers can then implement in the system.
Okay, so do you work with law professors too?
We don't work with law professors because we want to work with people who actually practice law, not people who teach about the law.
But they're the ones that actually are up to date on some of the practices. They're the ones who put standards in place, and then the lawyers go back and they use some of the synthesis that the professors put in place.
They do.
How about judges? I mean, former judges, because
so we did have a panel of judges that we brought on board to review. So one of the product that we produce for the customer is a trial presentation. It's basically, it's a pamphlet of folders that get to the judge that explain their case, provide evidence, all that stuff. And only what the judge care about, not all the other parts of the dispute that you might have. We ran that document to the judge to kind of see, is this something that you would like to see? And so we do that, but you don't have to bring them on as a partner. You can bring them on more of as consultant advisors type kind of thing.
I think some executives, they don't have the foresight to bring in external assistants. You don't have to bring co-founders, and you don't have to have shares and consultants, but they're so good at one thing that they forget to bring others to kind of help in the other areas. But you have a team in place that's doing that for you.
I have a team in place. It's important to kind of understand what you know and what you don't know.
Exactly.
Don't mix the two.
Right.
It's also important to expand the scope of knowledge to your team. So for example, with the lending software, I started realizing that, so, we have developers, we have technical support people who provide support for the product. None of them had experience in mortgage. And so what I realized was that they were approaching the support and the development of the product from a kind of like an abstract view. They didn't really understand why things were the way they were.
Right.
And so I actually put together an educational program to have them process a mortgage by hand. So they use a calculator, but by hand, because the technology automates a lot of things. And if you only deal with it on this level, all this stuff is hidden from you. Yeah. Even if you're the coder on it, it's still hidden from you.
Right.
I wanted them to actually experience it directly, so that would then have an impact, both in terms of what they consider to be important, it's a priority, and also how something should be implemented.
Yeah, it's true, because then they understand the pain points better.
You understand the pain point. And this is a different approach than asking the customers what do they want. Yeah. Because the customer don't know what they want until they see one of your competitor, and then they say, I want you to have that. But then you're not innovating, you're copying, right? You're following them. So you have to touch reality and then apply your understanding of technology to reality to see how you can improve reality.
That's true, because a lot of times you see clients they say, oh, there's a function, there's a feature that I want, but they don't understand why that function feature came out of that product. There was a certain timeline where it fits their product. They may not fit your life cycle.
Or there's might be technology like AI that will dramatically improve the functionality if you were to incorporate that, versus just copying somebody else who's, let's say, not using AI.
Okay. It looks like we're running out of time. I'm not sure if anybody online has any questions. You can shoot the questions into the in the comment Q&A, and I can ask them. Otherwise, we usually end the program with some fun games. So, anyone has any questions? No? Okay. This is a question I always ask my guest speakers, is like, do you, as a fellow Vietnamese, is it gum or pho for you?
It's usually pho.
Why?
But if I want to go to sleep, then it's gum.
Oh, it's like Lloyd was on the show, and he was telling me that he would pick pho any day because it brings back good memories of his childhood. They'll always have pho on the street corner, and it's nice and warm, and it always brings back pleasant memories. Right? For me, it's gum. I will always have gum every day. I could not have pho every day.
But my pleasant memory is actually bánh mì.
Bánh
mì. So I remember when I was young in Vietnam, my dad, after he got out of the camps, he would go I guess he'd go to buy or something, right? And I guess when he wins, when he comes home, he'll buy me a bánh mì. Yeah. And food was scarce, so having bánh mì was.
That's right. You left in 82. So this is like 6 years after the close of the war in 75. So you mentioned camps. Is that some of your followers in a camp?
When you find on the wrong side of the war.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And then another Vietnamese thing is like when you go.
I actually was in camp too. So I when I met my wife, I told my wife, I had to confess to you, I'm a felon. It's like, what? Well, yeah. When I was 4 years old, I tried to escape. I got caught. I was in prison for three months. There's probably a record of me in Vietnam somewhere. Of being a felon.
4 years old.
4 years old.
On your own, or with your dad?
With my mom.
Oh, with your
my mom.
Yeah, a felon at 4.
It was an interesting camp experience, but I'll say that for another day.
Right. Another question I tend to ask my guests is like, the top 2, 3 things that happens at Vietnamese weddings, right?
The Jao.
So like, you either have karaoke
Uh-huh.
and French dance, like ballroom dancing.
Yes.
So between the two, which one would you do?
The ballroom dancing all the way. I actually
Ballroom dancing all the way.
I actually used to compete in ballroom dancing in Pro-Am, so
I could tell the way your posture. I was wondering where that posture comes from. It's like a straight posture. So okay, so
Yeah.
you're a ballroom dancer.
I did a
Oh,
little bit.
still do or no?
No, I haven't done it for 10 years, but
Every single wedding, right? Vietnamese
Yes.
wedding, is it have to have karaoke or ballroom dancing?
Yes.
Or both, probably.
yes.
There. All right. Well, thank you for coming onto the show.
Thank you.
I think we learned a lot today. And I think what you were talking about today is also a preview of our conference that we're going to have in June. It's really focused on PE investments into the tech sector. We're going to
Okay.
do that in Saigon. So hopefully you can be there and share your experience with the audience then too.
What yeah.
It's in
I'll
June,
ask what-
June 21st to the 24th.
Okay.
Well, thank you. All right. Thank you for following the show, and we'll see you guys next month. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.